Hello, my name is Ben and welcome to Field Foley episode 12. I'm excited to introduce you to Christopher Bolte, a talented sound designer, mixing and mastering engineer and field recordist. Hailing from Germany and now based in Boston, he's shaping music, creating innovative tools and crafting captivating soundscapes for games and film. To add to the excitement, he's just returned from an exhilarating field recording expedition in Zimbabwe. So, hi Chris, and thanks for taking the time to talk to me.
Hello, thanks for having me, and thanks for that very flattering introduction there.
Of course.
I appreciate it.
I hope everything was correct. I try my best to do my research.
Well, awesome. Well, I'm glad. Always good to get introduced by someone else for once.
Yeah, can imagine. Yeah, so the first thing I'd really like to ask you right away is, and I will link this image in the description, but you have this photo of your trip where you stand like a few feet from a lot of angry and hungry birds feeding on a cadaver. So how does it feel to be so near to those vultures feeding?
It was awesome. It was both mesmerizing to watch, but also terrifying in a way. Not that they've been known to ever hurt humans or anything like that, but having, I don't know, like three dozen vultures that are weighing like 40 pounds each just sort of go through meat like it's nothing and leaving nothing behind like 10 minutes later is kind of wild. And sounds wild too.
Oh yeah, I can imagine. So it's like, yeah, it must be like a captivating soundscape, but also it's like this intense, I could almost feel like the power of those animals from the picture. It was like, yeah, you could really see this raw energy of animals. So yeah, how did you get to this this feeding? Is it like something that like the locals told you how to get to those occasions, or like was it the right time, right place moment?
Kind of the latter, yes. So when we arrived at the resort that we were staying in, the driver who was helping us out essentially told us about, oh yeah, there's this like charitable foundation that's doing a daily vulture feeding at the resort, essentially a little ways off, sort of a little ways into the area that's not necessarily prim and proper, but all or sort of untouched. And yeah, it's essentially this thing where they collect food donations like raw meat, spines, bones, that sort of stuff from local restaurants, and some from their own kitchen, and essentially feed vultures every day around 1 p.m. to, for one, help boost their population, because there's been various hits to the population through like poachers poisoning them, or them getting poisoned by eating animals that were treated with medicine that can kill them, that sort of thing. So they were doing it as an effort of conservation, but also of course bring people very up close to these animals and sort of raise awareness of how important they are to upkeeping the ecosystem there, and also stopping the spread of diseases.
Holy hell, yeah, I didn't know that they were poisoned by poachers. Do you know anything more about that? Like how or why do they do this?
So what the guide was telling me is that one of the primary reasons it happens is because poachers know that vultures will guide the rangers to the site of a killed animal, essentially.
I see.
And so they'll place meat that's been treated with poison, essentially, so that the local vultures don't even make it to the site of like where an elephant's been shot or another animal, and thus not alert any rangers. So even though there's anti-poaching laws in place and everything, it is still pretty common, just because it is, for many people who may not have much of a perspective as to what they can do, it's still a fairly easy way to make money, although it can earn you a pretty significant prison sentence if you do get caught doing it.
That is horrible.
It is
already getting pretty dark in the first few sentences. That's awesome. No, but it's it's an interesting insight into all that, and I think you have probably learned a lot about about the culture and about the animals and the ecosystem there. So first I wanted to ask you, how did you even get to record there? Is it something like you planned on doing, or did you have like some sort of occasion to go there and record?
It was also kind of a right place, right time moment in that my wife, her boss, was actually planning this trip for like a bunch of people to go on, but not as a group trip. But instead have it be like everyone can sort of organize their own trip, but they can essentially help us finding local guides and drivers and everything so that we aren't just stranded when we arrive there. And so we were mostly independent, but it was sort of planned as a group event and just was a great occasion to take gear along and seize the occasion and record as much as possible.
Yeah, absolutely. I can imagine that I would also be right up there with you and using that opportunity to get my gear together. And do you have like any particular challenging or interesting recording in your travels? Anything that you're like, oh, this one didn't expect that, or this was something? I mean, the vultures are already pretty intense, like standing next to them. But anything else that maybe comes to mind?
So I think the biggest lesson I learned was sort of right from the get-go is realizing that pretty much all day, except for the hour of the vulture feeding, it was just constant helicopters where we were. Mainly because we were about 5 miles away from the actual Victoria Falls, as in the waterfalls. And so, of course, helicopter tours are the thing that happens all day. And where we were, especially, even though we were looking over this huge patch of just pristine, untouched nature, over to the right of where we were looking was also where a lot of the helicopters took off. So that immediately made me feel like, oh, damn, will I even get anything? But then I realized they do stop at night. There's some opportunities to record then. And there's also, of course, other locations that we can go to. But so that was right out of the gate a challenge that appeared immediately. And another thing I was surprised by, too, is so I set up recorders to record all night from different spots, including the porch as well, because it was just overlooking just grasslands, essentially. Was, for one, the silence, like how many long stretches of just nothing there was, which is also kind of wild to encounter coming from a ridiculously loud city. Right now, Boston is quite brutal when you don't have earplugs in. And then also how loud the waterfalls were, even though we were miles and miles away from them, like 5 or 6 miles. It almost sounds like there's a big city nearby, but it's really just the rumble of those waterfalls. That's just a constant drone that's happening. And sometimes ebbs and flows in really interesting ways, too. Like throughout long recordings, I've heard it sort of crescendo and decrescendo every half hour or so. So that was super interesting to experience just how powerful those waterfalls are, even quite a ways off.
That is really cool. That is something that I always get a bit angry about when I'm playing a game. Like, for example, the first time I played Skyrim, and I was walking up to a waterfall and I couldn't hear it from like half a kilometer away. It was actually like, I hate this. You can have like a normal conversation with an NPC right next to a waterfall, and like, what are you doing, man? It's like, it has to be roaring. It has to be like really annoying, because like, it's raw power and it's a lot of water and it falls like a long way. So yeah, I can really relate to that, and also to the silence. I was with my father on a vacation once and we came through Arizona, and we stayed like near the Grand Canyon in a very small town called Madview. Yeah. And I had my camera back then. I didn't record back then, unfortunately, but I will want to go back there to record.
Oh yeah.
But I wanted to go out in the middle of the night and start to shoot photos of the night sky and then maybe also the sunrise. And we drove out there with like motorcycles and parked them. And after we like get off them and dropped our gear, we just realized it was like completely silent, like absolute silence. And I mean, I'm used to, in my part of Germany, I'm used to the woods and the nice, I would say, silence in quotes, of the night. But that was something different. It almost felt like a vacuum, and nothing. And then suddenly somewhere far away a coyote howls or something, and it was
Yes.
just chills down the spine. It's amazing. Yeah. So you also have a lot of ambience recording then from the silence and from the nature there. That's awesome.
Yes, although I'm still sort of working my way through those and seeing what is actually how much of it is far enough above the noise floor, even though I used Uzi Pros and stuff, but it's sure. definitely a concern with how quiet it was. But yeah, there was moments like that, especially at night, where there was long stretches of nothing, but then on a couple occasions there was a single hyena, must have been very close to where where the microphones were set up. And it was like calling out in the middle of the night, and you have this really gorgeous reverb just off these like huge plains of just land that sounds just utterly haunting and really beautiful. So I'm super glad I caught that.
That is wonderful.
And you have like a lot of isolated events of like, oh, here's guinea fowls getting scared by probably some other critter, bird swarms coming in the morning. But yeah, a lot of like nicely isolated things, and a lot of sounds I did not expect, and with this like hauntingly beautiful reverb that I didn't even knew would just come off of these flat plains. It's just really cool.
Oh yeah, that is definitely sometimes you get those unexpected reverbs where you're like, where is this coming from?
Right.
I had this once with a particular part of the forest near my home, where there's a reverb, and it must come from some trees and combination of trees and wind, but it's like it's almost like an echo in the mountains, and it's very eerie, and it has this like forest reverb. That's always some kind of mysterious force to me.
Yeah, absolutely.
Talking about gear, because you mentioned the Uzis. I would guess you would take them because they are very small, so you can carry a lot of those. Did you have any special gear you took on your trip besides those?
So I had to constrain myself to what would fit in sort of half of a carry-on. Mainly because we've heard some stories about like checked baggage getting lost with certain airlines, which actually happened to other people who went on the same trip. Their luggage showed up like 7 days in. So we did pack everything into like carry-on suitcases that were as large as they could possibly be. And so what I brought mainly were a pair of Uzis, always on me if I can.
Same.
H1N just to have like a recorder for anything that I hear if I don't have the others on me. One of the newer Rycode shotgun microphones, which was sort of my first sort of trial in the field for that one, and I actually really liked it. The Rode Ambisonic microphone that I mostly used for the waterfalls, and for some recordings in a little birdwatcher's hideout during sunrise. And then, did I bring anything else? I think that's it for microphones. I brought an F3 just to drop a recorder somewhere, and then the F6 for everything where I was going to be with my recorder, and have the option of plugging in both the Uzis and the Ambisonic mic at the same time to have like a stereo backup as well.
Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, that sounds like quite a lot. 3 recorders and a bunch of microphones. That's when you think about it, right? It's a lot of gear then.
And one of those Ulanzi tripods that convert into a boom pole, like the ones that are really light stands, but they actually work really well for microphones because they're carbon fiber and affordable. And
you will have to send me a link to that because I've never heard of that, and it sounds like that is something I need because I'm schlepping a lot of tripods with me all the time, and it's horrible.
Yeah, they're awesome. They're like a more affordable version of the Manfrotto Nanopole, essentially. But it's all carbon fiber, and it extends up to around 6 feet. So it's not like a boom pole you would use on like a movie shoot, but it's definitely fine to like dangle your microphone a little further away than what your arms can reach, for sure. That
sounds perfect, like for my use case. Awesome. already got some new gear to buy.
Highly recommended.
Very cool. Yeah, as I said, like we put all those links in the description then, so other people can use it as well. That's awesome. And anything you, in hindsight, thought, I shouldn't have brought that, or something I should have brought, that you think about now?
I mean, in hindsight, I wish I had a parabolic microphone because that would have been amazing to have for all those like distant sounds I've heard just from our porch and from other locations that we were in. That the shotgun mic was just not going to cut it for.
Yeah.
But the grass is always greener. There's always other opportunities for extra gear to bring along. But I'm also glad I didn't overpack for sure. But if anything were possible, bringing a parabolic mic would have been amazing. But alas, I don't have one at the moment.
Yeah, I can relate to that. I bought some a while back, a Tilinga parabolic mic, and
Nice.
I absolutely love it. The only thing is you have to pack it. And the good thing is you can the dish is very flexible, so you can roll it up in a roll and just carry it rather occasionally, I would say, but probably not in a carry-on. But it's it's if you need like isolated bird sounds or anything where you can't go near animals as far as you would like. That is a really cool thing. So really recommend it, but not flexible.
Yeah, the Wildtronics is on my is on my wants list. So
nice. Yeah,
we'll see how long that'll take.
And when you go back or come back from such a trip, how do you approach organizing and cataloging all your recorded sounds? Like, do you have like a process for that? Any tips?
Yeah. So the very first thing I did, and I had a lot of other stuff to do right after I came back, so I dedicated like half an hour here, an hour there, sort of after work on the couch, that sort of stuff, to at least get some organization into everything. And so what I generally did was, first and foremost, I went through all the recordings with RX, especially the overnight ones that were 8, 9, 10 hours long.
Yeah.
And just sort of put markers on any sonic events that, for one, sounded cool, but also were like usable for sure. So like keeping an ear on like the noise floor and how much work would be necessary to like isolate certain things. Yeah, so setting markers for everything, going through all the files one by one that way. And one of my hacks for keeping track of it is just one of the great macOS Finder features is that you can have colored tags for files. So I do like one color for has been reviewed and markered, and then from there I proceed to like cut those events out, name them sort of vaguely as to if I have an idea of what the species is that I caught in that recording, I would name it that way. Otherwise I would be like unknown mammal, this time and date. Precise information TBD. And sort of, save those specific spots that had those sonic events into individual files. So I have an overview of, for one, how much material there's going to be and what categories it roughly falls into. And from there, I put everything into Pro Tools to start laying things out, editing a little more, seeing what processing I have to do, and setting up myself with markers and everything to then go through, send stuff to RX if necessary, that sort of thing, and go from there. And then, I mean, I'm at this stage at the moment, so after editing and everything, metadata would come would come after that. But I am making notes for myself in the little info pane that you get in macOS, just to have some notes in there that'll also show up in SoundMiner once I start working in there to tag everything. But yeah, trying to narrow down what sounds I want to edit early on. Yeah, then editing, then saving those out, and then bringing them into Pro Tools and going from there.
Yeah, and like, do you have a rough idea of how much material you will get out of that, like in gigabytes or minutes or whatever you have?
It's a little hard to say at the moment. It's definitely going to be a little smaller than I thought, for sure. But I think all things considered, we might be looking at somewhere around the 2-hour mark or so.
That's nice.
Depending on how much of some of the continuous ambience recordings I'm going to be using. Yeah, with that, I'm not sure. It might even be a little longer than that, but we'll see for sure. Especially because a lot of the overnights were sort of littered with like individual sonic events that then were followed by an hour of silence.
Yeah, but I mean, like 2 hours is not bad. I mean, how long did you stay there?
We were there 9 days.
Yeah, that's quite a good turnout.
I definitely wish I could have stayed longer or have had a couple more drop rig locations. But again, I'm definitely excited to get everything edited and really happy with what I did get, for sure.
Yeah, I can imagine that. Yeah, and besides this latest trip, any other trips you made in the past that you were really like proud of or were really special to you?
So it's actually my first like long distance dedicated field recording trip. And that's mainly because myself working in sound design is only something that I started doing in the last 4 years or so. And that first of all came out of musical, like sound design for music, and then eventually led to wanting to actually do game audio, field recording, that sort of stuff more. So it was definitely the first dedicated trip, but I've always brought recorders to other ones. Like I made a little library with sounds from Berlin. I'm recording some ambisonic ambiences and such in Boston as the year goes by to maybe get a cool library of that too, but definitely hoping to do more of that in the future. It's something I'm super inspired by, and something that is something that's taught me a lot about listening, being in the moment, and sort of disconnecting myself from from all the woes of life.
Yeah, I hear that answer a lot, and I mean it's the same for me. It's like almost a meditation, going out and recording and just prolonged listening and intense listening.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I feel it's probably a universal truth for people, just concentrating on one sense. I mean, the same is true for photographers when they go out and have like just a camera in hand and are in this zone. It's also something they say that they zone out and just relax into it. Speaking of like your beginnings in recording, the question that I always ask every guest is, what is the first sound you ever recorded?
Yes, I've been thinking about that one.
You're prepared.
A little bit ahead of time, and because there were like a lot of occasions of me like recording something, but I think one of the formative ones, or probably the most formative one, and the first one I remember was, it must have been between like 7 and 9 or so. And if you remember, like hi-fi tape decks usually often had like a microphone input.
Yes.
With like a little volume dial for your like karaoke nonsense or whatever. And my dad showed me that you could plug headphones into those and just like yell into the headphones and use them kind of like a microphone.
Nice. Yes.
And so we played around with that a bit. I did not understand how it worked at the time, but it's definitely something that made me curious about like recording and the technology involved, and how there's not just pre-recorded tapes of songs, how you can put your own stuff onto tapes. So I think that's the first one I remembered for sure. And I've been recording pretty much since I was around 10 myself.
Okay, and then just like for fun stuff, or did you also, or I mean, of course for fun if you're 10, but
yes.
Just your voice and goofing around, but or also like recording nature or recording animals or anything like that?
Really mostly goofing around. I remember making like GTA Vice City had a function where you could put MP3s into a folder and it would play on your custom radio station.
Yeah. So
like a friend of mine and myself we had like a boombox with like built-in microphones, and we made like our own 1.5 hour radio program for it.
That's awesome.
Which is really cringy and bad, but it was fun at the time. And then a little later on, like I started like plugging my keyboard directly into the computer and recording with like Windows Audio Recorder and experimenting that way. And I started playing drums. I had like a single microphone with like the headphone jack kind of plug on there that I would plug straight into my sound card and just record my drums from different perspectives and seeing how the sound changes. So I've always been recording something, but I would say I got serious about it quite a bit later with music and such, around when I was 14 or so. I started doing it both for myself, but also recording other bands from school for like $50 each, something
Nice.
like that. Yeah. It was quite fun, and I have most of those recordings still too, which is even more fun.
That is awesome. Yeah, you always you never know when you can probably use those in a capacity for sound design.
Absolutely, there's stuff in there where I'm like, how did that happen? How did we do that? Because it was often myself playing drums, one of my friends playing guitar, and like one mic somewhere in the room. We even managed to. I know now that it's a bad idea, but he had like a little like Behringer amp, and we were like, let's plug it directly into the line in on my sound card. And like the second time we did that, it fried the sound card with a quite big arc coming out of it. So lots of formative recording experiences there. Lots of trial and error.
Yeah, I mean, learning by failing, right? I mean, that's the way to go. That's the way to go. Yeah, actually, speaking of arcs, that's a good segue into how I first came to notice you. Because you posted, I think it was on Airwiggle, your library EMF essentials, like the recording of electricity. Yeah, and I really, really enjoyed that. And I mean, I also have one of the ones from Lom Audio, the Presor, which you can like record, the electricity all around, and it's always fun. And I just wanted to ask you, what did you learn while you recorded this library? Did you I'm guessing, just like me, you started to put that everywhere and trying to find out what makes what noise. Maybe something interesting you found out while doing that?
Yes. So I originally wanted to build my own electro sluch or electro sluch, whatever you call it. Yep. And failed quite a bit. So like my soldering skills were up to par, but my assembly skills were not. So I ended up buying some electro Uzis, which are the passive inductors that you can just plug directly into the recorder, and was kind of taken aback by how many different sounds you can get out of especially things like computers and phones and such. Yeah. Where especially with those, you can bring them so close to the device to the point where you hear like the clock frequency of individual components, and like where you can sort of look at like an interior photo of your MacBook and like hold the things there, hold the Uzis there, and be like, oh, that's what that sounds like. This is what my RAM sounds like. So I was thinking that was quite cool, and to see like how even mundane things like a wireless keyboard can create kind of fun sounds that you can turn into a lot of, or that immediately make you think like, oh, I can turn this into a lot of really cool like sci-fi weapon or spaceship sounds or something. So it's just a cool exercise, and finding like sounds in objects that you haven't really thought about much and that you're just using. And I have like a huge list in my notes of everything I want to hold them to still that I haven't yet finished off. Like down the road, there's one of those little signs that tell you how fast you're going, with like a little radar thing in there. And when I walk by, I hear it like humming, and I'm like, oh yeah, I want to record that. That probably sounds cool while a car is going past. So just like field recording itself does, it opens your ears up to ideas of like, oh, I wonder if this like electric device may have some cool sounds that are just hidden in plain sight.
Yeah, absolutely. It's the same for me. And the first thing that really like brought me into experimenting more with it was when I was putting the Presor over a power supply, and it was like I think a 50 or 60 hertz one. And of course, it made a 60 hertz noise, so you had like a really awesome bass. And I just by like wiggling the microphone back and forth, I could like perform a bass line. Yes. And I was like, oh fuck, this is awesome for like it's just making music, making bass notes, and it also has this electric quality. I mean, it's stupid to say it like that, but that's exactly what it is. Yeah, and it you can also feel it in the sound. So. That's a fun thing, but it's interesting that you said that you try to build it yourself. I'm gonna have to look into how to build one myself, because
they have it posted in their wiki. Nice. The link to the article, and it's okay. But like for me, it was like I got the only breadboard I could find that was roughly similar, wasn't exactly the same dimensions, and like the photos aren't that clear to tell which trace goes where, and I was like, oh god. I put everything together and there's no sound.
I have the same issue with my modular synth behind me. It's like I'm doing like a paint by numbers thing where it's like, okay, I know which components I need, I know where they need to go, and I solder it all up. If it works, awesome. If it doesn't work, I have no idea about electronics. So I'm starting to learn slowly how all this works, so I can debug them myself. But it's I can feel your pain. If it doesn't work, if no sound comes out, you're like, and now what? I mean, you can double check the components, you can solder everything again just to make sure. But at some point it's like, you need to have some kind of knowledge.
Yeah, absolutely. It's almost like there's a reason why people go to school for that.
Absolutely, yeah. And while people that make really good microphones and also interesting microphones like Lom is like, it's worth the money. And also those are, I mean, still amazingly cheap, in my opinion.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because it's like, yeah, they are all very, very good quality, and they are all fun to use, and the people are so nice. Communicating with them is also awesome. So hopefully I get to interview some of them at some point as well.
Oh, I'd love to hear that. Yeah, it's great to see so much like DIY culture sort of hitting the mainstream in music tech a lot more. I mean, modular, of course, is one of the big examples. There's like a huge store in the Boston area here that specializes in mostly DIY modular components and such. But also to see people finding like those unicorn off-the-shelf microphone capsules that just perform amazingly well, and then like starting up a little shop and building these microphones that make them accessible to a ton of people around the world. It's super exciting and cool to see that we're no longer just bound to like 4 or 5 mic manufacturers that everyone's trying to get products from.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's really, really cool development that I wasn't even aware of before I just like randomly saw someone mentioning them on, like, when I just got accepted to the Field Recording Slack, and someone was like, "Oh, Uho Pro's on sale." I was like, "Yeah, sure, I'll get those."
Yeah, that is awesome. I mean, same for me. When I started out and I wanted a contract microphone, and I by chance saw a video from a music producer I really like. He's called Heck, with HECQ. I don't know how you spell it, but he makes like really nice, intricate beats, and there was like a special video for him in Ableton, and he was using like contact microphones and underwater microphones, putting them into a glass and swirling them, and I was like, wow, this sounds really amazing.
Yes.
Yeah, and it turns out it was from Jess Riley French. I had him on my podcast on episode 3. And
yes, I remember that.
Yeah, he builds all those things, and you can really tell that he's like really into it and fine-tuning, like finding the best way of building those, making it sound as good as possible, and so you get a really handcrafted microphone for a, I would say, absolute fair price.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's so cool to see. And then through that I came also to LOM and to other manufacturers. And now I'm every time I talk to sound people like me, I'm asking them, do you know maybe any microphone manufacturers I don't know? So also to you the question, maybe, do you know anything interesting that people might not know, besides Jess Riley and besides LOM Audio?
I feel like since I got a lot of that information through Reddit and the Field Recording Slack, maybe not. But I mean, I've recently started ordering some stuff from Sonorous Objects, specifically because they make like super low profile XLR cables, which are handy for drop breaks and such. And he makes like the same kind of microphones that like Mic Booster and Loam are doing for a very similar price. But if you're in the US, of course, it's nice because, shipping is cheaper and they arrive a little sooner. But yeah, pretty much the same idea, just slightly different construction. But what is nice is that they make like the EM272s and some other mics with the regular XLR plug, kind of like the basic Uhos. But they're a little more readily available at the moment. So if you do need them in a pinch, it's kind of cool that you can order them there. They are like partially 3D printed, like the capsule mount is, so I don't know how well they fare in like humidity versus the Loams, which seem pretty much bulletproof in that regard. But yeah, I'm definitely going to put those to the test for some rain recordings and such in the near future.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, I haven't heard from them, and that's good. I mean, we put it in the description, and if someone from America is listening, maybe they haven't heard of him, so...
They also make tiny cardioids, which is kind of cool. So you could even do like an XY array that could fit within a BBG.
Ooh, nice.
So you wouldn't need to have like 2 wind bubbles for it.
That's very cool. Yeah.
So it's kind of cool to have like a really tiny cardioid mic with the same capsule, just vented in the back, or a similar capsule, just vented in the back for the cardioid pattern. So that's something I do want to try out in the future.
Yeah, that sounds pretty good. And going back to the recording, do you like have anything that you've run into and found a solution now? Because I feel like, just like we were talking about boom poles and tripods, I right now have like a boom pole, an actual like boom pole, that I have in my hand because it's rather lightweight and I can use it as a walking stick, but still I have to carry it around because I have the tripod on my backpack, and so it's like, it's not optimal yet, so I'm trying to improve on that. Do you have anything else where you're like, in the beginning I had this and it's like, so stupid, and I have this wonderful solution for everyone.
Kind of hard to say again, because field recording is still something that I'm now actively doing, but haven't always been actively doing. I was mostly recording music for for the majority of my life thus far.
Doesn't have to be just for field recording. I mean, for general recording or for sound design, whatever comes to mind, because sometimes you have something where it's like, oh yeah, I'm doing this, and people are like, what? I've never heard of that. So it's always good to just, whatever you have.
Yeah, that is a good question. Just thinking about that, one of the first things that pop into my head relate to both music, but then sound design once you're in the DAW, for sure, is that through now, I want to say about 12 years of mixing or so, I've definitely, I think it's 12, maybe even more. I think definitely relying more on bus processing than like slamming individual tracks has been game changing for my workflow, especially in music, but also for things in sound design where you're like, well, I want this entire vehicle that's sort of consisting of like 15 different tracks to sound fatter. It's like, why instead of going to town on every single track, like maybe processing the entire thing together can have a much bigger impact and give more coherence to everything. And it's gotten to the point, especially in music, where like bus processing is doing most of my heavy lifting for anything from drums to backing vocals to like even the master bus at times too. So that for sure was one of my biggest learns in mixing, as was parallel compression as well.
Yes, I remember that, Johnny.
Yeah, I mean, I used to put so many compressors on vocals until I was like, what is this mix knob for? And it's like, wow, this sounds so much better. Yeah, so parallel compressing vocals, master bus, drums, explosions, yeah, like throw it on everything, try and see what it does to it, and if it sounds good, leave it on. Definitely one of my favorite techniques. One thing that field recording taught me for sure was also losing my fear of non-cardioid microphones. I feel like having talked to many people who are in music production and recording and such, I feel like Omni microphones are getting a bad rap, unless you're a classical recordist or, again, field recordist. Of like, whoa, but I want to isolate my sound source and I want to have like stereo, but only in front of the mics and stuff like that, where a lot of like professional recorders and tone meisters will be like, well, if you can, try Omnis first, and then if you have any difficulties with those, then try directional microphones. But yeah, it's just been kind of magical to explore the lovely world of Omnis and how great they sound in nature and for music and in pianos and for classical recordings. Yeah. That was also something that field recording taught me first and that I've now sort of utilized in all areas of recording.
Yeah, that's very cool that you can like get back new impulses from field recording into other roles as well. I have the same thing, the same with like music making or sound design in general. Sometimes I record something and then later on I find out, oh yeah, I could record that and just use it as this. And I don't have a specific example now, but I have so many things in my head about like, yeah, I remember like things clicking in my mind. Because of something totally unrelated of recording something in the woods. And especially also the microphones, of course. Because also in the beginning I was thinking, I need this parabolic mic just for those simple mono sounds for the spurts. And of course, this is very, very useful. But then lately I've also had the pleasure of getting the Ambisonics mic from Rode, the same that you have.
Nice.
And having that as a general ambience in the background, because I mean, of course you can turn around but you can't go like really near something or far, right. But if you have it as like a general ambience in the background, you have already filled your soundscape so much just with one recording, and then you can place those mono sounds in Engine. And for game audio it's something that's really, really exciting to me, and I'm so excited diving deeper into this.
Yeah, it is such a killer mic. I'm so glad it exists at the price it does. And yeah, that's been definitely my favorite mic purchase thus far. Even if I don't have a surround rig here yet or anything, even just listening to it just with headphones is just so immersive and lovely.
Yeah, absolutely. And also, I'm such a big fan of binaural sound.
Yeah.
Especially also, I've heard some music recordings from a performance in binaural that was really, really amazing. And you can do so much cool stuff with that. The only gripe I have with it, to be honest, is I really love very, very quiet ambiences.
Right.
And you always have a noise floor, of course, and especially with an array of 4 microphones, you have 4 times the noise floor. So what I'm now exploring is trying to find somewhere near me an anorechic chamber where I can just record the self noise of the microphone for denoising.
Yes.
So yeah, as you can see, I'm getting really deep into the nerdy stuff now, but that is something that my goal is now to bring all my microphones there so that whenever I record something, just like you said, like a very quiet ambience, I want to have the chance to clean that up as professionally as possible and have a really, really, hopefully as pristine as possible recording of almost silence, because I just love those things. And oftentimes when you're out and recording something that is quiet, you tend to just raise your gain so it gets a bit louder so you can hear at least something. And then when you listen back, at least for me, it's like it feels not the same as being there. I mean, it never feels like the same because, of course, it's microphones are not your ears. It's another pair of ears. But it always feels a bit too, I don't know, too loud and too noisy. And that is my goal now, trying to find a way of recording really silent environments that sound not too noisy. Yeah, we will see if I succeed. I will let you know.
You gotta make friends with people at a technical university. I think some of them have those.
Yeah, we have one in my town, so hopefully they have a chamber. I haven't reached out to him yet, but yeah, I will try to find one. I actually was in Denmark a few months ago, and I was in a very cool place that's called the Sound Art Lab. It's the old, the company Bang & Olufsen, the old factory of them. Mm-hmm. And they basically they built a new factory at some point and they left almost everything in there, even some desks. And they said it's like for the community now, you can do art installations, people can do experiments.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it was amazing. And a really nice person showed me around there. And they actually had one of those chambers, but it was... I hadn't had any microphones with me, just like a bunch. And also it was very, very old and moldy, so I'm not sure it was the healthiest thing to stay in there for a long time. So yeah, but it was awesome. It was the first time me walking into those chambers, and yeah, I must say it's exhilarating. It's just, I don't know if you've ever been in a chamber like that, but...
Sadly not yet, no, but I can't imagine, but it must feel quite wild.
I mean, somehow I can just say that it feels exactly like you would expect it to feel. Like if you have it if you see it in movies or if you see it in like a creative way that somehow people get deaf or something, it's the same. It's like at first it's eerily quiet for like, I would say 1 or 2 seconds, but then it starts that your body adjusts and your hearing adjusts and tries to find some kind of sound, so you hear anything. Like every heartbeat and like your breathing, and it's just intense.
Yeah, I can imagine. Yeah, that's also something that's kind of like how we sometimes like to obsess a bit about noise floor, where it's like, oh, I captured this really quiet thing.
Yeah.
Now let me bring it up really loud to like listen to any imperfections, and sort of, I think sometimes that can also plant a bit of like a bug in our heads, where we're like, this is way too noisy, I can't use it. But then it's also, like, at the end of the day, like, anyone who would be using that sound would place it at, like, minus 60 lufs or something like that, as, like, a bed underneath thing. So, I don't know, sometimes it's a little harder to gauge because cranking it up all the way sort of robs your brain of the actual perspective of that this would give you if you listen to it at a closer to real life volume, I guess. So it's something I'm learning to right now with field recordings of cutting the gear some slack there. I mean, like, well, I'm trying to boost this by 65 decibels. Maybe that's really that's really the issue.
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely. I can understand that. That's totally the case. And I mean, if you take any room tone recording you have, even if it's like from a very high quality library or even a movie, if you turn up your gain very loudly so you can hear those, that's essentially, it's also just noise. And just this white noise or pink noise or whatever noise it is right there. And you're right. I mean, that's something that is true. Just the only thing I have with that right now is that I know of other recordings that I hear that are amazing, that I also can turn up a bit, and I'm like, oh, this is such a clear thing. I mean, the example I have is right now, my last recording with the MP-Sonic mic was in the abandoned mine shaft. I was there a while ago, and I will go again probably.
Nice.
And it is so cool because you have no birds, no airplanes, no traffic. You hear only the reverberations of the individual drops falling down. Mm-hmm. And sometimes there are very little drops and very low volume drops. So even if you try to like boost it just a bit so you can hear it and it's awesome, you have this constant noise floor, and I know how it sounds when I'm in there, and it's not like that. So it's just this obsession of trying to get exactly that sound across because it's such a special place to me. But I can understand, of course, it's the obsession of getting that stuff as clean as possible.
And it's funny too, because our brains can, like, our ears also have self noise, but our brains know how to sort of listen against it and sort of just render that out essentially, and have us still be able to focus on other things. Just like we can isolate voices from really loud soundscapes, like downtown Boston would be, for example. Our brains are just a lot better at processing that than electronics are at this point in time.
Absolutely, yeah. That's also something that I always like to tell people when I talk about what I do and why I like sound and what's so interesting. That what they really can relate is to, for example, when they live in a noisy place and they have this traffic noise. And in the beginning, it's very noisy, but after a few weeks, like your brain adjusts and you can sleep rather well. I mean, some people can't do it, but it's like normally you can filter out those things. And then I tell them, just like you said now, that we have also the self noise that gets filtered out constantly. And technically, there is always noise in our head, but we don't need it. So the brain says, just drop it. And the whole realm of psychoacoustics and all that stuff is just immensely interesting to me, and something I really need to explore more and more in the next years.
Yeah, absolutely. It's wild how how unmatched the brain still is in how we can process our senses and just to perceive the world, even when there's so many distractions everywhere.
Yeah, speaking of like special sounds, do you have anything that you'd really like to record and haven't had the chance yet to do so? I mean, vultures is pretty high up on my list, I would say. Like wild animals in Africa is something that I really like to have the chance at someday, hopefully.
I mean, one thing you've already mentioned, I do want to do mine shafts for sure, because my hometown of Bückeburg in Lower Saxony actually has sort of a system of abandoned mines that go quite deep into the mountain, and also there's underground lakes and some quite scary crevices that go further down than anyone really would care to admit. So I'd love to do that and get like impulse responses and like maybe some ambisonic ones too, that sort of thing. And there's also an old World War II arms factory in one of our mountains as well that's sort of sealed off to the public but gets opened up every now and then for tours. So it would be amazing to record those eerie soundscapes there too, and maybe even sort of use that as a means of like raising awareness to things we shouldn't forget about our past.
Yeah.
So I think that would be amazing. I definitely want to travel a lot more to find the remaining pockets of silence that we still have, both in the US and outside. But in the near future, it's probably going to be more so in the US.
Yeah.
And I think mostly see a lot of things, hear a lot of things, finding silence. Yeah, I think that's what I can think of right now.
Yeah, finding silence is it's also my thing. I mean, the only thing I have right now on my plate that's hopefully in the near future is like a big surface mine thing. We have some in Germany, some of those big like areas where they mined like very deep into the ground, and you have those big massive pits. And I can imagine like maybe the reverb is pretty nice, maybe like some rocks falling down is pretty nice. So but also, just like you said, like awareness to the scope of us breaking open the earth That's something that is at equal times horrible and horrifying to me, but also fascinating.
Yeah.
And something I really want to see, and of course, for sure, listen to myself, because that's. I think it's something that's not ordinary, and that always excites me.
Yeah. I wonder if anyone's recorded those giant coal diggers that we have in Germany yet, because those must sound amazing too. But I don't know how close you could possibly get to them.
That's the thing. I mean, my plan is to bring my parabolic mic.
Yeah.
So yes, you already know my plan then. But no, that's something that I really wanted to try to get a recording of those as well, and use those in like mechanical, enemies or any design I can need. And also like have the ambience in like after hours when nothing is running, and have the quieter ambience from there. So yeah, I will also reach out to some people. Maybe I have even the chance to go there, but most of the time, of course, we don't have that chance because of security and safety issues. So, but we will see. But that's something that's on my plan. And if you're ever in Germany and we'll go to a mine, let me know. I'm happy to. If you want me to join you, or I can show you my mine, you can show me your mine. And because it's all, I think we live pretty close, or your home is pretty close to mine.
Yeah, it's not too far from Minden, and then not too far from Hannover.
Okay, I can drive up there.
Yes.
So maybe speaking of the future, do you have any upcoming projects or collaborations that you're excited about that you can already share and talk about? Like anything non-NDA?
So, I mean, I'm working on a handful of indie games that I can't really talk about, sadly, but I am excited about them. But then also, I'm working on a couple of libraries. Of course, the Zimbabwe one coming before the end of this year. I have like a rain library in the works that I've recorded for the last 4 to 6 months. Nice. To get nice and clean rain sounds. And then in general, just, I mean, my website is my pride and joy. It's like my favorite hobby is maintaining my website. So bolttracks.com, a visit is always appreciated. And then other things I'm working on is, I mean, as many of us are trying to find a sustainable job in game audio. Also thinking about going back to school as well to get like an official degree to cement that as well. But we'll see where that goes. But I would say my website is the best way to stay up to date. And I'm trying to put out libraries at a pretty regular pace, with some freebies here and there as well.
Yeah, I can also really recommend checking those out. And of course, I will also put it in the description. Check those out. Those are amazing. And I'm really looking forward to your latest library and listening to the Vulture sounds. I'm so excited. And maybe besides that, do you have some of your own favorite sound libraries you use, or recordists that you really like that you know of?
So, I mean, for one, I've gotten so much stuff through crowdsourcing that I can highly recommend to anyone who has not done one yet to absolutely participate. And you'll grow your sound library in no time, and you'll get so much recording experience out of it. So definitely participate in any sort of crowdsource you can find that seems doable. That's definitely my advice there. Otherwise, some of my favorite recordists would be, or literally my tied for the number one spot are probably George Vlad and Thomas Rex Beverly. Just because, I mean, as far as ambience recordings, George Vlad is amazing with how much effort he puts into it and how far he goes to get us sounds that are just unmatched in their quality and sort of their elusiveness. And then Thomas for finding really cool sound design opportunities in things like glaciers, giant pine cones. The bowed cactus library is just insane. So I think they're tied for my number one spot for different reasons there, but they're absolutely people I look up to, and I love using their sounds.
Oh yeah, same here. Especially the last one from Thomas, the glacier ones. The photos alone are just like awe-inspiring. Him hanging like on wires, steel wires, and then this above this open pit that just looks like it goes straight down to hell is so amazing, yeah. And
the interview with him too, where he talks about like pieces of ice the size of a skyscraper just cracking off the face of the glacier are terrifying, saddening, but also sound absolutely incredible. And yeah, like sounds we sadly won't be able to capture for much longer. So it's also important work at the same time. It's not just for, oh, these are awesome sounds that someone's making money with. I think it's super important that we preserve them too.
Absolutely, yeah. That is something that I also always really like in people that try to find specific animal recordings and try to get recordings of specific situations, like mating calls or like different kind of species that you only have in different parts of the world. Because just like you said, like the audio conservation part of it is also really a big thing for me. And nowadays, fortunately, we have so much opportunity to back up stuff that it's hopefully that none of the really important stuff will get lost in the years, but we will see.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I think I'm all out of questions, so the only thing I have left now is to ask you, do you have any shout-outs, anything you want to promote, except that you already did, but I mean, anything else, anyone you want to shout out? The floor is yours.
Haven't thought about that one. Let's see. I mean, I personally would love to shout out, for one, the Field Recording Slack. Like everyone should be on there. If they can, everyone should join. It's an amazing space to be in. Air Wiggles, the first audio community that's actually good and actually seems to sustain itself. Mainly because it's not about everyone trying to get jobs. I think that helps a lot. Those two for sure. For anyone looking to get into game audio, gameaudiolearning.com, amazing resource. Has helped me a lot already, and I'm also still having a lot to learn. And I would also say definitely shout out to Soundly too, which is one of the tools that definitely got me going early on. Yeah, with a great library and just a really amazing sound library manager.
Awesome. Yeah, so again, thank you for taking the time to talk to me, and happy rest of your day.
Same to you. Schöne Grüße und auf Wiedersehen.
Auf Wiedersehen. Looking for more audio-related podcasts to listen to? We're part of the Audio Podcast Alliance, featuring a hand-picked selection of the very best podcasts about sound. Be sure to hear the latest episodes from our friends in the community at audiopodcast.org. And if you've enjoyed this episode, please consider supporting on patreon.com/fieldandfoley or ko-fi.com/fieldandfoley, where you gain early access to episodes in lossless format and can submit questions for our guests. Thank you for listening.